welcome back to Behind the Gloss. Today, I'm here with a very special guest. And before I introduce her, I just want to talk about how much I enjoyed this book that she wrote. Literally, I started 2025 being like, I want to read a book about leadership. And she already called me out in the book. She was like, yeah, a lot of people think leaders and think of men. And I was going to get a book by a man about leadership. But this book, Painted Wolves, wound up in my hands. And this is amazing. Literally, I'm looking at the world differently, myself differently. I think everyone should read this. And of course, I have the author here, and it's the one and only Dr. Kelsey Marigos.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, good too. Again, thank you
Yeah,
for this book.
yeah,
Truly.
of course. And thanks for having me.
Yes, life changing. Truly.
Oh, I'm glad.
So again, this book, it's called Painted Wolves and it's about leadership. Like when I saw it at first, I did not put the two together.
Yeah.
And so what made you want to name it Painted Wolves? Or maybe first I should ask, what made you want to write a leadership book?
Why I wanted to write a leadership book was just because I study leadership. I'm a researcher, professor. So I spend a lot of time reading academic articles and popular press books about leadership. And I just noticed that a lot of them were written by men. And a lot of the advice didn't really resonate with me. And then as well, like in the academic literature, so much of that work is done by men as well, studying other men, because historically that's who's taken up those positions. And I should clarify, white men largely as well. And so it just seemed like such a narrow view. And I was like, you know what? I think there's enough. I think there's something interesting out here that we could talk about. And it was right around the time COVID was starting, not to bring up those dark times. um, but so people started to notice, right, that women in power that were leading their countries were doing quite a good job and standing out. And so there was a lot of discourse around that as well. And so I kind of picked up on that and just ran with it. And in some ways, it became like my sourdough. A lot of people started making sourdough during the pandemic. And I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. I think it'll help me process my emotions and not think so much about what's happening.
So cool. And yeah, because I did want to almost say trigger warning for people because she does talk about the
Sorry.
pandemic. Why are we talking about this? But I think you showed the good side of it, exactly what you said, like women leading their countries and the women that you talk about in the book, they actually did a great job. So again, we have COVID leadership. How did the title Painted Wolves come to be? I'm like, what did, well, when you read the book, like you'll understand. But just looking at it, I'm like, I would not assume that this is what this book would be about.
Well, there's kind of two answers to this. One, as you mentioned, once you read the book, you see kind of where the inspiration came from. It was from I won't give it away, but there's a bit on the back, so it does give itself away. I was on a safari in South Africa, and I just had this like really enlightening, I guess, lesson and learning about painted wolves and how they cooperate. And the safari guide was the one who tied it to leadership. And I think everyone else in the car was like so unbothered by this conversation, and like it was life altering for me. And so it really stuck with me, and I thought it was such a an interesting metaphor for there's so many animals in the animal kingdom, and we always kind of come back to the loudest, the most aggressive, the biggest, right, and say, oh, that's how we should be. And it's like, but there are small ones and really cool ones doing really interesting stuff and operating differently. And why are we not looking to them and learning from them? And so the other side of this is from a marketing perspective with the book publisher, it was a catchy title and it was interesting and it stood out. But it did, I have got a copy here, they were like, you cannot put a picture of a painted wolf on the front because everyone is going to think this is a nature book. I was like, okay, you're right. So we had a bit of a balance. The title, oh my gosh, it kept me up at night. You write this whole book and then they're like, well, what are you going to call it? I don't know. It was originally called Smashing, actually, because people were talking about smashing the curve, the COVID curve. And I thought it called back to kind of smashing the glass ceiling and all of these things. But then smashing means a lot of other things colloquially. And so we were like, oh, maybe steer away from that.
I see where you were going because I was like maybe smashing the glass ceiling, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I like it. I love it. And I am trying to be a painted wolf. You also talk about other animals in the book as well, but I did want to go back to like what made you want to even study? Well, you didn't study leadership, you studied psychology, but then it led you to teaching leadership. So, yeah, like why did you want to study psychology? And then how did that push you in the path to become a leader, like as a professor?
Yeah, so a bit of background. I have a PhD in organizational psychology, which is just like the science of people at work. And so I was a psychology major as an undergraduate, and I just loved to learn about people. And I really liked the idea of helping people. And I kind of looked at the different career paths with psychology. And this was just the one that resonated with me most. Like we spend so much of our time at work, right? And that it was like, well, this is really a great place to make an impact, and in a unique way. I think therapy is really important. I have a therapy appointment later today. But that wasn't the path for me. I wanted something a bit more. I really like the scientific angle as well, to ask questions, empirically investigate them, design studies and do all this kind of stuff. Um, but anyway, so that's how I came to that. And I actually didn't start as interested in leadership. I came to study creativity, which I still work in as well. So understanding the science of how we can be more creative individually and in teams, which is really fun as well. That's a separate episode. Um, but yeah, so then my own leadership definitely has developed throughout the years, as a professor, and learning to work with students and lead other faculty members and the different challenges that come about through that as well.
That's so cool. And I guess we can plug it in now because you do offer consultations. I don't know why I can't say that word. People who want to become leaders, right? Did you want to tell us about that now?
Yeah, so I do some consulting with organizations and teams. So it's some leadership development as well as creativity training, and then one-on-one coaching. That business is just starting to launch in this summer, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah, and the one-on-one coaching is specifically targeted to women looking to, at various stages in their career, looking to advance and progress in the leadership ladder.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So yes, we already talked before. She's gonna come back on to talk about like her own business. But here I really wanted to talk about leadership because it is so important and particularly like female leadership. Like I know in the States we kind of missed an opportunity twice to have a female ruler. But to be fair, I was kind of thinking like I felt like both campaigns when the women were running was just kind of like just don't vote for that one, vote
Mm.
for this one. And it's like, well, you don't really want to win with that, do you? But anyways, I just think it's so important for like women in particular to like be able to see themselves as leaders, which again, you did so well in this book by acknowledging other female leaders like that have been leaders of countries. But for you, like, how would you describe or define leaders or leadership?
I always go back to kind of like the textbook definition because I think it is actually really useful. Sometimes textbook definitions aren't, but this one is. So, it's really about an individual or a group of individuals influencing others to reach a common goal. And I love that definition because it highlights several different things I think we forget about leadership, right? So it involves other people. So there have to be kind of, to use the simple word, like followers, right? There has to be someone that they're leading. So often I see people be like, oh, they're a leader. I'm like, well, who's following them? They have like interesting thoughts, but what is then that other component is that common goal, right? They're trying to influence someone to get to something. And now I think we're in a time where leadership is really evolving because with the internet, I sound like such an old person. The internet to the web, but social media, right, has democratized voices in a way that we didn't have before. So people are able to lead and influence a group of people to a different kind of goal in a really unique way. So I think that definition still holds in that setting, but it's really interesting to see. So that's my definition, really. Someone influencing a group of people to reach a common goal.
Like it because I really like the part about the common goal because it's like they're not trying to, well, I would hope I don't want my leader to like just be so selfish. I would
Yeah.
like them to think of like the common goal of the people. But again, like, what do you think people get wrong about leadership so often? Like, I kind of feel like it's everything in the book.
Everything, yeah. It's the answer, everything.
Gosh.
No, 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 not everything. But I just think we rely a lot on our implicit or kind of intuitive thinking about what a leader should be or what leadership means. And so much of that is shaped by who we see. Um, and and that's kind of how we, you can take a class, but if you walk out of or even a training, let's say you take a 1 week training class, whatever, and they tell you all these things, but then you walk out and your environment tells you something entirely different, right? You're going to ultimately kind of fall back to that environment and what it's telling you. So I think we get so much wrong because we have such limited examples of what leadership looks like when there's so much potential for what it can be, but we don't really see that as much. So I think we also make assumptions. I just think about conversations I've had with people where they say, "Oh, well, they're going to be a great leader," and I'm like, "Why? Tell me why." And I'll say, "Oh, they're just such a people person." I'm like, "Well, okay. I mean, that maybe that's going to help with influence, right? But like, what are the outcomes that they're achieving? What is their, to your point, what is the goal they're trying to take us towards? How are they going to get us there?" But we don't think about it that critically. We rely much more on those kind of stereotypes and our quick reactions of what we think of rather than kind of digging in deep. And to be honest, it's hard to do that, right? It takes a lot of brain power to be like, well, let me think about it in that way. It's a lot easier to be like, well, they look like they'll do a good job because they look like, so and so. Anyway, so yeah, I think we get a lot wrong, but that's kind of at high level what I think is happening.
Again, it makes sense. Like you said, we kind of are just going based off of what we've seen in the past, which I do think is a bit funny because, again, when you look at history, it's like, but it didn't work before, like in some instances. And again, in the book, you were talking about how, like, people were already saying that another pandemic was on its way and that people were supposedly preparing for it.
Yeah.
And then when it came, no one was prepared.
Yeah. Well, not no one, right? Like a lot of
So
countries,
true.
well, not a lot of the Asian countries, right, were really well prepared. They had experienced several pandemics, and I think the lesson really is they learned, right? So they said what worked, what didn't work, and then let's prepare and plan for what happens with the next one, which those plans were shared, and other countries, had access to them or could have just looked and said, this is what they did, and it worked or it didn't. But I think there's coming back to that goal aspect, right? To your point, we don't want leaders who are selfish. There's a lot of selfish motivation. There's other motivations, maybe that aren't selfish as well, that get involved that disrupt that leaders, I don't want to say ability, but maybe desire to choose the most effective path.
I do respect every leader just for the fact that you're going to take that leadership position.
Yeah.
Like, again, in the States, even if the person I voted for didn't get in, I'm like, you know what? Whoever's in there, I applaud them for just taking it because I'm like, so many people are looking at you and critiquing every little thing you do. Like, that's tough. So, like, do you think, I don't know, leaders are kind of like purposefully sometimes trying to be a bad leader or realize that they're being bad? Or do you feel like maybe they're being steered or like the pressure is just kind of making them act in a way that maybe if they didn't have the pressure, they'd act differently?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think I mean, it's rarely, right, that you have kind of we call it like bad apples and bad barrels, right? So it's rarely that you have like solely a bad apple, I would say, that's like just really rotten. And it's not often that you just have an entirely just a bad barrel that's going to kind of rot all the apples. Often you might have some sprinklings of a bad apple, right? And then you have a bad barrel that just kind of lets that kind of lets the apple rot, to use the take that metaphor to the end. Um, so I think it probably is, to take that back to leadership, right? A combination of, it's possible there's bad motives, but it's also possible that under the pressure, you just crack. I mean, I can't say what I would do. I don't handle pressure very well. I'm working on it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a hard job, to your point, and it's easy for us to sit and I think critique and to comment. We don't have all the information that they have as well, right? We're not in those meetings and the briefings and knowing what else is at play and what the whole landscape looks like. So it's a hard job with a lot of information and a lot of pressure. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right that it could be that as well.
Yeah, so do you think we as the public or people who aren't in leadership positions that we also need to change what we think leadership is? Because I do think there's a lot of classes out there that are like, do you want to be a leader? Like, here's how you do it, and here's what a leader is. But I do
Yeah.
feel like another part of it is no, we need to tell the people who are gonna follow the leader what they need to look for in a leader to know like when someone is leading you astray versus when someone truly has good intention. So sorry, I feel like I answered my own question to you.
No, it's fabulous. I'm done. I'll just leave. No, I think it's a really incredible insight, and it's so true. You need both, right? I think we need better training for leaders to help them be better.
Yeah.
And then also we need, as a society, kind of loosely, we need to be more critical. We need to be better critical thinkers and understanding of what makes a good leader so that we can better assess and choose and
Yeah,
hire as well.
that part. Because I do feel bad. Like at work, I'm like, you don't really get to choose who your boss is. So sometimes you do just, well, do you just have to suck it up? Because again, I like to try to change. So I'm like, no, I do want to sit down and have a conversation. Be like, look, the way you're leading is not good for my style of learning. Or like,
Yeah.
is there something we can do? But yeah, I don't know what my question is. Sorry.
Good observation, right? We don't get to choose our leaders at work often. And so how do you manage that relationship when you're the follower, right? Or the employee? Yeah, and approaching them and opening up the conversation is a really good place to start. If they should do it themselves, but if they don't, you bringing it up is a good way to start that.
Okay, because like, what would you define as a quote unquote bad leader? Is there such a thing as a bad leader, or just maybe a misguided leader? I don't know.
It's a really hard question to answer, actually, because I think what is good depends on the situation, right? And the outcome you're trying to achieve. So, if you're talking about like crisis conditions, someone who wants to sit around and have a really thoughtful conversation with 10 people and get everyone's input and like really dive deep, like the crisis is going to happen. It's going to be too late, right? But now, if you've got time, like that's a really effective, interesting approach to take. Whereas you might need someone who's like much more kind of decisive. I don't want to say authoritative, but I guess
Yeah.
in that line, right? In those types of circumstances. So I think it depends. It depends on who you're leading. It depends on what the outcome is that you're looking for. It was something I really struggled with in the book, actually, because I looked at it from the outcome of people's lives saved. But there's also like, and you might even say, some people say it's too early to even look now, right? But the economic impact, you can look at the mental health impact. Like there's so many different outcomes you can consider when you think about what effectiveness means,
Mm.
that it can be quite difficult.
Okay, because again, to our earlier point, I do feel like people are so quick to be like, they're a bad leader, they're a good leader, but it's like, I think you already said it. Well, what are you leading? Like, what is the goal? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah, always have to define your goals. I think even in business, they're always like, okay, what are your goals for this month? Like, did you reach that? So, full circle, everything is about goals.
Always goals, always those goals. Well,
Yeah.
I think you also, I just want to touch on one thing you mentioned as well, is this idea of like justice. So we talk about in research procedural versus distributive justice, which is just like the outcome, how just the outcome is versus the process, right? You know, the phrase, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about what is bad leadership, right, you can think about the outcome and you can also think about the means they took to get to that outcome. And we can disagree, right? Were those tactics good? Were they bad? Were they effective? Were they not? I
Mm.
mean, that is a little bit more objective, effective or not, right? Did they get to the outcome? But whether or not that was the right choice or the best choice, you know, it gets really hairy and messy. Um, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, I like that because that's such a good distinction. Because again, I think just like I said before, I don't think people really think about all the steps and all the things that you could do. And it's like you don't know what other choices they had. So
Exactly.
again, like, how can you really critique? So again, I'm like, well, whoever is in the leadership position, I'm like, I hope they're doing well and I hope they made the best choice. Because again, I just
Hard.
don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, one thing we do know though is a lot of men are in leadership positions.
Yes.
And I personally want to see more women, and I think we will. But yeah, why do you think women aren't in the positions of leadership?
Yeah, well, it comes back to what we talked about a bit earlier with what what do people get wrong about leadership? And I think our stereotypes of leadership are they're masculine, like stereotypically masculine. So it's strong, assertive, what else? You get strong, assertive, you get agency, so like really independent, kind of ambitious type people. And then so we look for those traits when we go to hire or select or vote for a leader. And then you have women who are expected to display these more stereotypically feminine traits, which don't align with that, right? They're meant to be caring, nurturing, which then people said, okay, women, go be assertive, aggressive, ambitious, and agentic. And then we did, and people were like, "Oh no, you're not ladylike enough." You know, like what is this? What's happening? And so it violated a lot of stereotypes, which then made people say, "Oh no, they're not right for it because that's not my idea of a woman, right?" And again, I'm saying this all like stereotypically. Um, and so that both things have really kept women out, right? You have these stereotypes that say leadership is masculine, and then you have women who don't align with that. So if we don't have kind of explicit criteria, which we really don't when it comes to voting and kind of bigger things, sometimes organizations do when they're hiring, but not all the time. We rely on those kind of stereotypes and heuristics. So you'll often hear people say, "Oh, just don't think they're good for the role." And you ask them, like, well, why? What is it? And they give you some kind of BS answer that is actually talking about, you know, those characteristics, but they're talking about it in a less, they're trying to be less offensive way, I would say. Um, so yeah, that's the biggest thing. And then I think, you know, women face quite a double-edged sword as they climb up. So even if they are able to get in their foot in the door with kind of being a little bit more ambitious in these things, they hit a roadblock at some point because they're expected to be more caretaking and motherly and all these stereotypes.
My days, because it's difficult, and I think any woman
Mhm.
understands this. Like, and it's like we go through this, but I do want to clarify because I think a lot of people be like, "Oh, it's so hard to be a woman." It's like, no, it's not hard to be a woman. It's hard dealing with people who don't know how to respect women. That's the hard part.
I love that. Yes. Great
And
clarification. Absolutely.
yeah, but again, for me, growing up as a girl, and it's kind of crazy because I don't think anyone sat me down and was like,
Hmm.
women are weak or women can't do this. I think I actually did get the messaging. You can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want. But I didn't see it, or
Yeah.
it would be like those little microaggressions. And then I internalized that and was like, oh, well, maybe I'm not a leader, or maybe I can't do this. And I would like take that, which is so sad. But then I read this book and
Your life's changed.
Yes, because I do want to mention, like, you do break down a lot of the stereotypes, like women are too emotional and like women aren't risk takers or like all these things. And you literally break it down and like, spoiler alert, it's not true. Like, she actually talks about real studies and they prove that these are not true. It's just how people like interpret, or I don't
Yeah,
know if that's the right word, but yeah, just kind of put things on us. So yeah, I think it's that classic case of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
yeah,
But I just applaud any woman that's willing to put herself in that position. But we've, of course, have seen people like women become leaders of countries, but there were so many countries and they're like, yeah, this is the first and only female. And I'm like, only like
no.
what? So I don't, is that the same question? Because obviously we've seen that it can be done, but what do you think is preventing it to being done again?
Yeah, there's some uh, I mean, these stereotypes are really hard to change. That's the honest answer. If like I always sound like a broken record because I'm like, it's our stereotypes. I will say it like 100 times a day. And
Oh.
my husband's so used to it now, by the way. He's like, I know I'm an what does he say? I'm a overconfident white male. I know. But I do really think that that is the heart of it. Like it's really hard they're really hard to change because they're very embedded and it's going to take quite a long time. Like we have to chip away at it basically. And it's not just gender, right? It's also racial. We see the same kind of effects that happen. And then of course when you combine the two, it
Mm.
gets very complicated.
I'm tired.
Yeah, of course. Like, yeah. So, I think it's that, and I think another thing that happens is we're much more critical of when women make mistakes because they are often um more in the spotlight, right? So we're like, oh, there's that first woman. Oh my gosh, look at her, and then she makes a mistake, and everyone's like, oh, see, what do we learn from this? No more, no more of those women. And it's like with that, but you don't give them the same or they don't people don't give us the same grace. And I think it's really important to say as well, like when I say people, I mean everyone, right? Like stereotypes are held by men and women alike. Gender stereotypes are held by men and women. And so I'm not just like sometimes people say, oh, you're a man hater. Like I'm not. It's everyone. I hold them too. I catch myself doing it where I'm like, oh shoot, why did I think that? Or that's your stereotype. So anyway, I'm rambling now, but
No, because you're rambling truth though. Because
you.
I do it too. And exactly what you said, I catch myself, or there's just like little things that I'm like, why do I think that? Or and when I think back, because I know I had like teachers, and I think most people can relate. They'll be like, oh, I need a big, strong man to help me carry this. And it wasn't until I got on the internet and someone kind of was like, why do they always say a strong man? Like, women can be strong too, and women can do it too. And I'm like, oh, is that? And again, I don't blame the teacher or think that she's like inherently sexist, but it's just those deep rooted things. And I think I don't even know exactly where it comes from. Yeah, I would always that it was, the white man because
Yeah.
at least in America, when our Constitution was written, it wasn't a person of color and it wasn't a woman.
No.
Again, like I think breaking down these stereotypes, it helps men too. So I'm like, we don't hate you. We're pointing this out to show you like you don't need, and now I'm rambling, but I'm gonna continue because even with like, leadership, I feel like there's a lot of men who just want to lead, or maybe they say they want because they feel like they have to. And I'm like, why would you want to lead? Like that sounds exhausting. Like everyone's like, if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. Like,
Yeah.
relax, ask for help. Like, it's okay. But again, you talk about it in your book, like when men
Yeah,
not wanting to ask for help and how they're perceived as weaker. And
exactly. It harms them as well, right? The gender stereotypes harm everyone. And I think I I always focus on the women because I think it's important for to lift us up, to get more power and status so that we can enact change, right? And we can show that. But with that, I mean, men will have better experiences as well. They don't have to be this manly man, and do these, like, you can have emotions, like you don't have to just be angry. You can learn to be sad and, have a cry. Like, that's okay. So yeah, with all of the stereotypes, we're talking about it from a woman's perspective. But it will ultimately benefit everyone.
Because actually, even though I am a woman and I am a woman of color,
Yeah.
like again, people might think my life is quote unquote hard, but I'm like, you know what? I kind of feel like this struggle did make me stronger and has again like freed me to be
Yeah.
able to feel a bit more comfortable to go against the grain. And I don't feel like men are awarded like the same freedoms. And it's
Oh,
like,
that's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, well, just like what you said, it's like, yo, if you let women and like people of color into the rooms to help make change and influence, and like, then you can go take a nap. You can go golf. Like, I don't know what you want to do, but like, go.
Whatever you want.
Yes. And again, I just feel like they're just so rigid. And maybe I feel like we've even seen some men feel attacked that,
Mhm.
like women and people of color are kind of like becoming more educated and just like doing these things. And like, well, where's my position? And it's like, I don't know, like, figure it out. Just let us do. Like,
Now, yeah.
yeah, and again, if you really want to lead, that's great. But are you like, please just ask yourself, are you doing it because you feel like you have to or because you want to? Because I've had to ask myself, like, do I want to get married? Do I want to cook and clean just because I'm a woman? Like people told me this is what I'm supposed to do, or
Yeah.
do I want to,
Exactly.
I don't know. So yeah, I think everyone needs to read this book.
Oh, thank you.
Because when you were writing this, who were you like hoping would read it and impact?
Yeah, I think I I mean, my dream was everyone. Men and women alike. And I think I say that in there, like, this isn't a book by a woman about women for women. Like, it's the leadership book for everyone, because I think we all need to change our views. But I think as I wrote more, it became clear it's a book for the target audience is women, right? The way it's written is the more aligned with, I think, books women will pick up. But I hope everyone reads it. And I know uh, several men have read it and have enjoyed it and found it useful. So if there's men listening, you can buy it too.
Honestly, I was gonna make my partner read this, be like, hey, babe, like you should totally read this because it's just so great. And like I did want to read part of it if you don't mind, because
Sure.
you talk about you're like, these women have shown us that leadership care. Let me start again because I'm already messing up. Hold on. Let me get this book in frame so that like get the shot.
So
Here
beautiful.
we go. These women have shown us that their leadership characteristics so often seen as flaws, are actually their strengths. Their preparation and often over preparation makes them worthy competitors in any room. And then you go on to say, why would we want women to be anything other than their already outstanding selves?
Why?
I read that and just felt so seen and just so,
Oh,
yeah, like again, as a woman, and I'll even say like as a person of color, I think it's very much like you need to be this, you need to be that, and
mm.
do this to again get be respected and this and that. And I keep trying to like mold myself. And yeah, just reading that line, I'm like, I'm fine. And
Yeah. You're more than fine, just so you know. You're fabulous. You're great.
thank you. Like, it takes one to know one, but it's like I could be a leader too, because I never saw that for myself because I was more quiet
Mhm.
and I've been called sensitive, although I feel like that's gaslighting.
It is.
But yeah, and even for you, like what was that journey to realizing that you can be a leader too, or you are a leader? Was that difficult for you to kind of realize?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. Like, I've been thinking about it quite a bit, and I don't know. I think when I was younger, I was quite shy. And then I was a theater student, and I just kind of was always on the stage and in front of people, and so it became kind of like a natural. And not that that's leadership by any means. There's no influence. There's no common goal. There's no followers. Um, but I think I just became comfortable in front of other people, and so I kind of naturally had skills, and not necessarily the good ones, that put me in positions of leadership. But even saying that, I think I like there are so many things I have to work on, like including everything I talk about in here. Like I am by far, I'm nowhere near like an incredible leader, right? It's like a learning journey for me as well. And so going back to who this book is for as well, like honestly, it's partly for me. Like in a book I wanted to read of like what are things I can work on that aren't like get up at 5 in the morning and be charismatic and you know razzle
Listen,
dazzle them.
yeah, I'm like, okay, that works for you, but
Yeah,
not me. So yeah,
I
I
don't
can't,
get up at 5 in the morning.
you know, I started to, and then I quickly realized this is not a way to live. So
Are you a morning person?
I was I was trying to do it because my sister is 3 hours ahead,
Hmm.
and we made it a goal to read the Bible like
Oh, amazing.
every day. And
Yeah,
then like my partner, he gets up at 5. So then naturally I just wake up too. So I'm like, well, let me wake up with a purpose. But
love it.
no, because then I just take a nap and then I don't get anything done during the day because I'm tired. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
don't
I understand.
just don't do it. But anyways, because like I said, I've been reading the Bible and I'm actually in the Jesus parts of the Bible. And
Okay.
Jesus is talking about, he's the ultimate leader and we're supposed to follow him and things. And he actually does talk a lot about being meek and
Mhm.
that to lead is to serve. And I just find that so fascinating and kind of like what you were talking about in the book of how you don't have to be so loud and so showy. And I just thought that that was a cool parallel. And
Mm.
I guess you got approval from Jesus. I don't know. We're looking
I need like a hat that says like Jesus, or maybe like stamp it like Jesus approved of this.
at it like so fascinating. And then the fact that there are, quite a few quote unquote Christians in the world. And I'm like, but I feel like it's not reflecting in how we're voting or who is leading us. Cause I'm like, sometimes they seem to be like the loud, like peacocks and lions, as you kind of like said
Yeah.
in the book. And I'm just like, where is the disconnect? Like, sorry, I'm not sure if you're religious by any means. I'm not trying to put that on you,
No,
but
no, no.
yeah, I was just kind of like, where's the disconnect in?
Yeah.
Because again, I wonder if like when people are voting, what what do you think they're voting for when they choose a leader? Like the person and their morals, or just, oh, I think that they're gonna do this with the economy. You know what I mean?
I've been reading a bit on religion and voting patterns because I found it quite interesting as well. I have a book recommendation I'll give you after. But religion is also, no matter what kind of religion you're talking about, there's a lot of patriarchal norms built into it as well. That I think are changing, but kind of if you think about the traditional kind of stricter versions of religion, they have a lot of those norms that I think reinforce again to bring it back to like the stereotypes and those ideals that people then look to for this like as a symbol of strength that is really confusing. I find it confusing as well because it counteracts, to your point, this idea of kind of be meek, be humble,
Yeah.
serve. Um, but yeah, there's been some writing on it. It's quite interesting as well, but it is a little controversial. So
Everything in life ends up being controversial some way, somehow, but I think it's at least fascinating just to like think about and like at least entertain the idea just for a little bit. Like, I just want to know because I think you can take little bits of everything. Like, I feel like even to create the perfect leader, I feel like some of like the bad bosses and teachers that I had that I maybe didn't like. I feel like there's still things about them that I can take with me and kind of learn from. And then there's like the good ones that, I want to take and then kind of build like your great leader, So I don't think,
Yeah.
yeah, to our point earlier, it's not black and white. Like you're bad, you're good. It's just you're a person and you're
And
trying to
sometimes you
do
make good choices, sometimes you make bad ones, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
But again, going back to seeing women in more leadership roles and being like in the room, do you feel like we need to have a quota of like, oh, we need X amount of women in Congress? Like, do you think that's beneficial or is that just performative?
I think it can be beneficial, but I think more often than not it's performative, sadly. And I think it can, so it depends on the intentions, really. And I think if someone says, we really want to change the system, and to start, we need to make sure we have at least this number, right, of women, and then we're going to grow it, or people of color, whoever we're talking about, right? And then we're going to grow from there. This is our starting point. But I think more often what you see is someone says, well, we need two women. And they find two women and they say, right, no more, no more of those. That's done. We've met our quota. And then it gets even worse when you see that happen. And then people then expect them to act not like women, right?
Mhm.
They say they don't either allow them to speak, or they're diminished, or there's a toxic work environment, or whatever it may be. There's 9 million things it could be, that limit their voices and their perspective. And not saying that, you put two women on the board and they're going to have like the best ideas ever all the time and you should always listen to them, right? That's not what I'm saying, but making sure they have equal opportunity, and that there's, we know we need more than opportunity, but also a willingness to listen and to hear and understand. So I think quotas are really complicated, and it depends on the intention, really, at the heart of it. But they can be useful if people want to create change, but it depends on why they're doing it.
I know even in the book, you were kind of talking about how sometimes when we see like a new female CEO or like taking over a company, it's when the company is like failing.
Yeah. The glass cliff theory. Uh,
Because I don't want to be upset, but I know we need to talk about it. I'm just trying to
Welcome
prepare
to my
myself.
life. This is like every day. I don't want to be upset, but I'm going to talk about it.
And again, these are important. I think this is how we like lead to change because it's not something that I recognized. But
Mm.
yeah, so I guess what is the glass cliff and why do we have it?
Yeah. So the glass cliff theory is this idea that women and people of color are put into positions of leadership and power when there's already a crisis kind of in place, and the company is basically going to fail regardless. So there's been actually a recent study that came out in the last couple of weeks that has shown that this might not be as strong as the original study show. It's a bit of a newer one, but it's definitely, if you can, once you hear this, you'll see it anecdotally everywhere. You're like, oh, that's good. Um, but I mean, to use a recent example, Kamala Harris is a really good example of that. So you think Joe Biden drops out really, really late of the race, right? Not to bring in politics, I know, but he drops out really late, and you have 2 months, and you pick a woman of color, right, to fill that spot, and then you're like, oh, she couldn't do it, right? Of course, you set her up to fail. And not saying, regardless of what you think of her, right? Those are the circumstances that of what happened. And so anyone, people would struggle in that position, but then you put someone, a woman and a person of color in that position, is, where they already have uphill battles with stereotypes and perceptions of them. It's going to be really hard. So I think it happens. I don't know why it happens. Research doesn't know why it happens. My assumption is that there's one of kind of two angles. One, it's like we'll give her a chance. Why not? See what she can do. We're gonna fail anyway. Why not? And the other is a bit of a savior, perhaps, complex going on of, let's, I guess,
Yeah.
almost, I don't quite know how to describe it, but it's like the opposite side of it. Like, oh, she's gonna save us. But then obviously it doesn't work. And the glass cliff doesn't always happen. Jacinda Ardern is a really good example, who was in a similar political position as she's the former prime minister of New Zealand, I should say. Very similar position to Kamala Harris, where she was thrown in late to the race, and her party actually won. So it's not like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doomed for failure, but we do see it happen quite often.
Because I assumed it was because, oh, we're getting like bad publicity. Let's do like the,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. Like do the diversity hire kind of thing. And then everyone will like applaud us for the
Yeah.
diversity. And like that's gonna increase sales or whatever. Because I mean, I'm obsessed with movies and TV. Like that's the field I would love to go into. And I don't know, I was just thinking about like Barbie because I think
Yeah.
like people didn't really or wanted to like write off the movie like, oh, it's just some chick flick, quote unquote, and then like it ended up doing really well, but then like the freaking company, they took the wrong message like, well, let's make more toy movies, and it's like,
What are you talking about, you dum dums?
yes. And again, I feel like even with like other movies we've kind of seen, I don't want to name like the actual company, but I think people will know because they used to have like a cast of all like white people, like
Yeah.
predominantly like white men, and like those movies were good. They started diversifying, and like the qualities of the movies.
Yeah.
No, because then people are gonna think that just because like we're there, it's bad. And
Yeah.
way I stream some movies, in my opinion, they're not that great, but I still stream them for the numbers. And I'm like, and unfortunately, it is just like money talks and
Yeah.
money wins, and people just,
So annoying, isn't it?
but
It's the same. It
again,
reminds me a lot of like women's sports, right? Where you're like, oh, nobody watches women's sports. It's like women's sports aren't on TV because there's no access there's no money and there's no access. And so of course, like fewer people watch women's sports. But what you see, right, is that when money is invested and when it's put on TV, it's watched. So it's like it's exactly to your point, I think, of like what it you put people in a position to fail. You don't invest in them as much, and you're not really looking at the heart of the issue. So
yes, but I do want to remind people because I know we're talking about this, but it's like we the people
yeah,
can inspire change and can invoke change. Like just keep talking, keep like use your money to do the change. I keep saying the same thing, but you know what I mean? Of like
it's true.
put your money into, women-owned businesses,
Yes.
women-owned products, and like people of color movies and things like that. Like use your money wisely, and same with
Yeah.
like everything that you consume. Like that's how we start getting like the people in charge or the higher ups to kind of pay attention and invoke change. And
Yeah. When I've got an anecdote, I always try to find women-owned products. And my husband knows this now. And so like, especially being when we were new to Canada, we've just been here a year. I was like really interested in learning more about First Nation, right? And so I was like, women, First Nation, like I'm all in. Like if you put that product in front of me, I'm buying it. I don't know what it is, but I'm buying it. And so we were looking for plates. And my husband is really into like aesthetics and design. And so he had a very specific plate in mind. And we looked everywhere for plates. And then we came across this like pottery, I guess, plate company. And it was women owned. She had connections to the indigenous community. And he was like, all right, fine, we're getting these plates. I was like, yeah, and they're beautiful and lovely. But anyway, so much in our house is that because you make it a priority, right? Like you seek out these things. And I think about it as well, recently think about the tariff threat, right? And watching Canadians like go to the grocery store and pick up everything and be like, is this made in Canada? Is this made in Canada? And it takes so much effort, but you can do it, right? You can be more intentional. And you don't have to do with everything right off the bat, but just starting with small things, even like picking up a book and seeing who the author is. Is it a woman? Is it a man? And you can use your money to your point that way.
no, I love that because I also did want to, I guess, make an antidote to your antidote. I do
Yeah.
find that usually, some women-owned businesses or people of color like businesses, they are a little smaller and their price point is a little bit higher. But y'all think about why, okay? Because, and
Exactly.
look, I'm not in a tax bracket where I can afford to, really shop like consciously as I want to. But, like when it's usually a smaller business, they're probably sourcing it from better places or from places where, the people aren't having like the child labor and like getting paid cents on the hour or whatever. You know what I mean? So again, it's usually like better ethically.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And yeah, again, I'm not gonna put it past anybody if you gotta go for the cheap one. I'm in that tax bracket too.
Yeah.
It's okay,
You
I'm
need,
not
and you
judging.
can't do it's hard to do with everything. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But again, just like wanted to put that out because we do want to see more women. And I think we are gonna see more women. Like I remember reading about why they feel like we had that like one and only for so many countries, like only one woman leading. And they're like, yeah, because women saw how hard it was for her. And it's like, I don't want to put myself through that, which
Yeah.
I know. And you do have a chapter in your book called Resilience, because I think we need to like learn how to be resilient and just kind of like go forth. But yeah, do you have any advice for women who want to lead of like what they should do or maybe even how they can be prepared for kind of, the animosity that they're gonna get from a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think the biggest tool you can use is your own knowledge of it. So, um, it's annoying because it's another thing you have to prepare and think about. But, knowing about it, speaking to other women about it and understanding, how they navigate it. Um, I also have started talking about kind of how to use gender stereotypes to your advantage, right? So thinking about in negotiations, right? It's annoying, but it's a if you know someone has that stereotype of you, right? You can use that to your advantage. And so until I mean, I always give the caveat as like until we have like radical system change and we're dominating the world, the reality is we exist in this world and have to figure out how to navigate it successfully. And then once we do, we open doors for other women so they don't have to do it, right? But so that to me is the biggest thing we can do is like be aware of this, learn about the stereotypes, learn about the obstacles that we might face, and prepare for it. And I think the other biggest thing, and I talk about this ad nauseum, but like your network is so important. And you know, network is such like a gross word because it feels like really worky.
Yeah.
And if I say networking, I'll just like vomit. It's so gross. But like this, like we're a network, right? And like we're friends, and so even your friends count, but it's having these relationships where you can sit around and have these types of conversations and be like, yeah, am I allowed to curse?
Oh yeah. Of course.
That is shit, and that does suck. And like, oh yeah, that happened to me. Here's what I did. And then having that support as well makes a huge difference. So I would say knowledge, and then get yourself a support network, whether it be friends at work, whoever that you feel comfortable talking to, a coach, whoever.
Yeah, I know. Hire Kelsey. Like she's amazing. But I just wanted to add to that, like the world has existed for like how long? I'm like, sexism has always been around, so like they're not gonna say anything new. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like even if
yeah,
a woman takes the stage, what are you gonna do? Criticize me for being emotional, not emotional enough? Like, okay, like you've already done it.
yeah,
Those women have survived. And again, we've seen those women persevere and like still lead a country. So it's like, okay, bring your worst. Like my
yeah,
people have survived it all. Like I don't care. And so I
yeah,
hope that that does free up people. Again, I know it's exhausting.
yeah.
And because with resilience, I feel like you have to have like stamina because
Mhm.
to keep like the attacks keep coming and you just gotta keep going with it. It's hard, but it's not impossible. So
No,
yeah.
and resilience is such like an important topic because we do need it, right? To your point, we need to persist and you need to be able to do it. But also, I just like to give the caveat when we're talking about resilience, like you shouldn't resilience your way out of a toxic work environment. Like if you're being sexually harassed, you don't need more resilience. You need to leave, or that person needs to be fired, right? So I love the concept of resilience and I do think it's so important, but sometimes I think it gets taken too far and people are like, I just need to be more resilient. It's like, no, that is bad behavior. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, just thank you. Because again, I'm like, I'm not putting up with that. Like again,
Exactly.
even if a woman is going into leadership position and you're facing all this opposition, like I hope that you also know it's not your fault. Like
Yeah.
even like sexual harassment, anything, it's not your fault. I'm so sorry. People are just, it's
Mm.
just deep-rooted sexism that they, I hope to God, don't know that they have, but you can learn and you can overcome. So just wanted to leave like on a high note, I guess, and not leave people aside. Because I will say, like, with this book, like, you do obviously talk about COVID and the double standards for women, and it does depress me sometimes. But in the book, you did it with humor and like relatability, like some of the what do you call it? Not like metaphors, but you just kind of have like
But,
social, like culture, pop culture,
oh
like
yeah,
moments and references in the book, which I absolutely love. And it's like, oh yeah, like I watched that show too. And then yeah, just the last chapter, you really do leave it like on a high note, just reminding women that it's okay to be yourselves.
yeah.
But to that point, when it comes to being a leader, is there different kinds of leaders?
Yeah, I think absolutely people should lead in different ways. I think for a couple reasons. I think um one, they should lead based on what's needed, right? So what's the situation? What are your employees or followers or voters or citizens, whoever we're talking about, what do they need? Not everyone needs the same thing. So being aware of that and what the situation calls for is a really important thing to think about. And then, authenticity is important to a point. I think I say to a point. I know it's probably a controversial thing to say. Only because I think like people like to praise, bring your authentic self to work until your authentic self is an asshole, right? And then you're like, please don't bring that self to work. So I think it's important to feel genuine, right? And something doesn't feel too forced. But recognizing that we all impression manage and have to be aware of other people, right? And how we interact with them. So I think the situation, the people you're leading, as well as yourself, and aligning those three things, that's not always going to be a painted wolf necessarily. But I think in general, there's things we can learn from them that as a different perspective that we can bring to the table that combined with other things are going to make for a generally effective leader.
Hey, I like that. And again, like I'm really excited because I know in the book, like you mentioned that a lot of times men kind of want to lead, but women kind of feel like they get thrusted or like they kind of have to lead just because they want to see change.
Mm.
And for you, do you feel like you belong in either camp? Like, how did that leadership position kind of come to you?
Yeah, I definitely don't want to lead. I read enough about it. Like, that's really hard. And actually, in my class, students, I ask them what they want to do, and they often say they like want to be a CEO. And my first response is always like,
Honestly,
do you know? Because if you know why, right? Amazing. But most of them don't. Most of them say, like, oh, it just like it's what my dad does, or it looks cool. And it's like, well, there's a lot of work.
yeah, because like to that point, for you, even as you're, leading leaders, which is probably like a whole nother level of craziness, but do you kind of see or like what qualities are you looking for in like, oh, this person is like in it for the right reasons, they're gonna be a great and effective leader versus maybe
Hmm.
choose a different career path. What is it? Don't quit your day job. Like,
Yeah, well, I think there's an awareness, right? That's really important. So thinking about that student I mentioned, or those students, it's not just one. I think people who are aware of what leadership entails and want to go into it, and that's a really good sign. So someone who comes up and is like, I'm in it because I want to be seen. That's usually a red flag. And then I think the way people talk about it, right? So you and I, before we started recording, we're talking about kind of why we do some of the things we do, and it's wanting to enact change, wanting to be a positive voice in certain spaces and share information. That is, someone who's wants to be a leader because they want to be in power doesn't talk about that, right? They will talk about, I'm trying to think of an example. Boris Johnson. So I used to live in the UK, and Boris Johnson's a really good example of this, right? Because he used to always talk about how he wanted to be the next Winston Churchill. And he didn't talk about how he wanted to, well, he probably did at some point, but that was his big thing, right? And everyone knew it, it was common knowledge. And that's a very different conversation than, I'd really like to make an impact in this space because I see this problem and there needs to be change. Which is, to your point, what a lot of these women who were in power globally during the COVID crisis, how they ended up in those positions.
Yeah, like just the difference. But anyway, kind of gonna go off to a lighter note. I love playing games. So this
Oh, yes.
one is called Cheerful or Fearful. I don't know why I felt like I had to add my own animation, but basically like we've kind of talked a little bit about like what it takes to be a leader and things. So when like I'll give you a scenario and you can just kind of tell me if you're cheerful to see this person continue to lead or a little fearful, like, oh,
Okay.
I don't recommend.
Okay.
First one, like a CEO of a company likes to publicly reward their employees based off their performance. Something like an employee of the month. Is this something we're cheerful or fearful about?
I think without more information, we're cheerful. I mean, it could go down a rabbit hole, a bad one. But, some people really want public recognition and that's important for them. So that's great. As long as it's not performative and there's other things, if they're like systematically underpaying all these people and then just saying, here's your employee of the month, then I'm fearful. But just in general, I don't think there's anything to be fearful about, highlighting someone. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm a bit fearful because I'm worried that like the same person will get employee of the month every month,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Or like I remember in school when they would have the awards. It would just be the same people getting the awards for like getting all A's, and then the rest of us would just sit in there like, okay, cool. So, yeah, I think I'm more fearful, but it could just be from past trauma of me not.
I mean, that is traumatic. It's
Thank
also
you.
traumatic when they do it the other way, right? And it's like they just give, like, they do a rotation, and you're like, I didn't actually do anything to win this award, but it's just my turn. Like, that is useless as well. That's performative, though. So,
Yeah, I don't know. So if anyone out there is doing employee of the month, let us know like how it's going for you guys. Because again, potential to be either one. But the
yeah.
second one, let's say like a director of a movie is going out with their cast and crew to parties and clubs, having a great time while filming. Is something cheerful or fearful?
Oh, I'd say more fearful than cheerful. I think it's probably common. So, it's probably quite normal for that to happen. But I think if once you're partying and there's power dynamics, it's always get a bit icky. So I'd say more fearful, especially in like movies and entertainment is one setting, but if you're doing that regularly at like a traditional office as well, oh, very fearful. What are your thoughts?
Definitely fearful. Like I think it's cool that, maybe your boss or whoever wants to have like a group activity,
Yeah.
but we don't need to be that close. Like, yeah. Because I think I heard someone, she was like, oh, like if a boss like invited you to dinner, they're like, yeah, go, but don't drink because things can go wrong when people start drinking. So yeah,
100%.
go be buddy buddy, but don't drink
Yeah.
and just talk about how great you are at your job.
Well, and also if like someone gives you the ick, don't go.
That
Right?
too.
Like if you like listen to your red flags because you know.
Yes, no, I love that. Thank you for reminding everyone. Listen to your red flags. The third one is a boss at work informing all of the employees about exact budget numbers and setting specific goals in like the number of sales that they need to reach each day. Like,
Fearful.
oh, you said cheerful?
No, fearful.
Okay, yeah, because I saw the head
Fearful.
shake. You're just kind of like, "Mm, no, not feeling it." Yeah.
It reminds me a lot. So I love a specific goal, right? But it reminds me a lot of what happened at Wells Fargo. I can't remember how long ago it was, but basically Wells Fargo did this. I don't know how publicly it was, but they made very specific goals. Yeah, and then people started cheating to get to them because they were too hard. So
Yeah. And I
they
worked
got fined millions.
Oh gosh. I agree. That's very fearful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like goals, maybe as a whole, like the whole employees, let's all try to reach this target. I think that's the
Yes.
goal. But yeah,
Much more.
so, and we've been talking a lot about political leaders of countries. So, what if a leader of a country is working with their political opponents and different party members and experts, like actually asking for help and reaching across the aisle to create new policies for their countries? Oh, she's clapping.
Cheerful. It's so cheerful. Yeah. I think that's,
I know, I think
what
it's
about
so
you?
important. It's so important. Like, that's what I want to see. So, fingers crossed that we spoke that into existence in all
Yeah, we
countries.
just did.
The last one, cheerful or fearful. A teacher who, when asked a question by a student, will just admit that they don't know what the correct answer is, or maybe they're a little bit unsure.
Cheerful. What a great role model to have. What a great role model. What do you think?
Yay. Well, see, I thought cheerful, and that's the kind of teacher that I was. And I was told that I shouldn't do that because they think I look weak. And I'm just like, but I was trying to create an environment where everyone can be wrong and we can all
Yeah.
learn. And I quit that job.
Well,
Thank
sounds like
you.
a good decision. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, thank you for playing cheerful or fearful. And I hope people feel more inclined to be a good leader and know how to look for leaders. But my very last question that I do ask every guest, it's a big one, but it's basically if you were to lose your voice tomorrow, what's like the last thing you would want people to hear from you? I know I get that face a lot when I ask the question. Maybe I'll change the question.
Really hard. So the first thing that comes to mind, so take it or leave it, is your voice matters. I think that was something that was said to me and it's like left the most lasting impact. And I want everyone to know that always, that your voice matters. So we'll leave it.
That's perfect, but that's kind of ironic. Your voice matters. This voice.
Gone.
Put your glass on, get your boss on behind the glass.
Mwah.